Welcome to IGN Summer of Gaming, presented by Nintendo Switch 2, all together, anytime, anywhere. I'm Nick Lamone, and joining me to talk about the press start from Konami is Matt Kim.
Hello.
And John Davison.
Hello.
Folks, before we get into actually grading this overall presentation, I want to talk about some stuff that maybe isn't quite on the caliber of something like Metal Gear Solid Delta or anything in the Silent Hill franchise. I want to talk a little bit, a thing that stood out to me and kind of surprised me is Darwin's Paradox. I thought it looked kind of cute. What do we think about it?
It looks great. It looks fun. I'm interested in playing it. You know, good octopuses are having a moment, right? Because there was that Netflix documentary, the My Octopus Teacher, that won the Academy Award.
They're very smart, Matt.
They're very smart. They predict Super Bowl winners, I think. So, you know, good for them. So good for
Looks super cute, like, you know, physics-based looking thing, and
it feels like a thing that, you know, every time we get these 2D, like, artistic platformer style games. I don't want to quite call it a Limbo-like, but it's the first thing that stands in mind. Because when I say Limbo-like, you know exactly what I mean. There's cinematic stuff that's happening in the foreground, the background. It's going to be charming. It's going to have some harrowing moments, but if nothing else, it's nice to see games like this still exist.
got a bit of Oddworld about it.
Yeah, it has like a quirk to it, which I really I think the synopsis says you get kidnapped out of the ocean from a ray of light. What is that ray of light? Who knows? I guess we'll have to play the game, wait and see. But apart from Darwin's Paradox, another thing that stood out to me as the JRPG fanboy that I am is Suikoden 1 and 2, the remasters coming to Nintendo Switch 2. Granted, this game has been out for, these games rather, have been out for a couple months at this point. They've released on all platforms up until Nintendo Switch 2 at this time. And, you know, this was kind of a thing that everyone assumed was coming, but they were very particular. Konami was very particular to point out that this is a game that's going to be running in a resolution and frame rate that is appropriate to the Nintendo Switch 2, which I'm hoping just means that it runs at 4K 60. But apart from that, I'm excited because, again, these are some of the greatest games ever made, and I think everyone deserves the opportunity to play them in a portable handheld experience. I couldn't think of a better way to play a long JRPG. Matt, John, does this move the needle for any of you?
I appreciate, but this is for a flavor of nerd that I am not.
Hey, I'm sitting right here, John. What about you, Matt?
I've heard great things. Maybe one day.
Is this going to tip you over the edge?
I mean, I can play it on my Switch too, so that's nice. But again, I've heard great things, and you know, I'm dipping my toes into some of the JRPG classics. I'm working my way through some old Final Fantasy games that I've never played. So this is one of those things where, like, I'll throw it on the pile. I'll throw it in the JRPG pile.
I
got a few hundred hours free.
Well, don't tell my bosses, but what do you think I'm doing during work hours?
You get to play video games for work? No, but apart from all this stuff, like the smaller things, I want to get a little bit into your game of the show. So, Matt, let's start off with you.
Yeah, I was really impressed by Silent Hill F. You know, I was already excited for this game before when it was announced, and you know, there's a lot of compelling things about it that I actually really liked that this went in depth into development. I'm really glad that we got to hear from the developers and the producers about what their thinking process was going into this game, you know, about how they wanted to capture the Silent Hill experience and recalibrate it to be more J-horror, as it was always like a Western and J-horror mix, but then over the years it was getting a little more Western horror, so now they're taking it back to J-horror. So that was really cool to hear. I really was excited to hear from the writer, Ryukishi07, who is primarily known for writing Japanese visual novels that are like horror visual novels that seem perfect for this setting. You know, one of his famous works, When They Cry, is set in a small Japanese town where scary things happen, and this seems very much like that, but with, like, you know, the classic Silent Hill elements that we love, like the metal pipe, the dark secrets, the psychological, you know, dread that comes with maybe some bullying. I don't know, maybe some deep hidden secrets, and you know, there's some shrines. Could be an evil demon god. Who's to say?
Yeah, landscape as an insight into the psyche of our characters is always a fun thing that I think Silent Hill really excels at. And Ryukishi07, I've once attempted to take a look at all those visual novels. There's a lot of them.
There's a lot.
It is just a mountain of visual novels, but I heard nothing but good things.
They're super long. They make anime adaptations, which is how I first encountered him, and I think they're easier to get into. I'm not the biggest, like, it's not like I also played the visual novels, because they are hundreds and hundreds of hours long, and they span multiple chapters. But the animes were good. And so I'm a fan, and I think he would do a good job with this material that he put out in front of us.
Yeah, it feels like a natural fit. But John, let's move on to your game of show.
So I don't know if you know this, Nick, but in the olden days, I ran the official PlayStation magazine, and we put
OXM, I think it was called.
No, it was the official PlayStation.
It was just
magazine.
Official.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Ryan McCaffrey that worked on the Xbox mag.
That's right. All right.
And we put Snake Eater on the cover. And it was one of my favorite stories to work on. So I have very fond memories of the original Snake Eater and working with Kojima and hearing about his vision. And it's been fun kind of watching how the way they talk about this game has evolved since they first announced it. Because I was a little worried at first that they were taking it way too seriously. Because, when 3 came out originally, Kojima had just come off of kind of being really beaten up for Metal Gear Solid 2 because everyone was like really upset about the fact that Snake wasn't really in it.
Right.
And I think he was making a very conscious effort and kind of like he took over as director because he really wanted to kind of wrestle control back of it. And, there was a lot of drama behind the scenes on what he was really trying to achieve with that game and going all the way back to the beginning chronologically and really kind of set the tone on kind of all of the lore. He kind of like wanted to kind of go back to the beginning. So it is a big move for Konami to go back and do that one as the remake, and I think we've talked about it in the past that it has a lot in common with going back and doing Silent Hill 2 first, because it is the one that people kind of hold up, whether you believe it's the best one or not. It is the one that is loved the most. Like, people remember the original Metal Gear Solid as being a just sort of like groundbreaking game because, like people couldn't believe it was just a sort of moment in gaming, right? Where people couldn't believe a game could look like that. And then Metal Gear Solid 2 was sort of like another moment, but then it had that kind of weird like bait and switch in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. But 3, it kind of like brought everything together and then people just fell in love with it. So for them to remake it and then it to look so serious initially, when Kojima had kind of imbued the original with humor, and then they've clearly leaned into the humor now, and I think that I'm really glad to see that, because I was a little worried that they were kind of like sucking the soul out of it a little bit at first.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I want to give a shout out to like the development team on Metal Gear Delta. They've been very transparent with their
they clearly love it, right?
100%.
Which I think is really, really important, right? Because like. Because of all the drama between Konami and Kojima, it would have been very easy for them to try and really put a different mark on it and almost kind of squeeze him out of it. Mm-hmm. But the team clearly loves this game.
And they fully acknowledge his, development of it as being this very important title, and their intent to be very authentic to the original experience is something that I think is very reassuring for longtime fans. And, regardless of whether or not the original game still holds up, don't get me wrong, but this is looking more and more like the fully featured definitive way of playing the game, whether you want to experience it in the traditional over-the-top camera perspective or the, in my opinion, much better third-person over-the-shoulder experience that was introduced in Subsistence. This just feels like the way I've always wanted to play this game, but now I have the added benefit of being able to like call people in a room and be like, look at how good this game looks. Isn't this gorgeous? Like, I think if nothing else, they've done such a good job of using Unreal Engine 5 and adding that art direction on top of it, so it kind of disguises the fact that this is, such a widely used engine, and it still feels very Metal Gear, which I truly love. And then, of course, there's that tack on. Everyone was curious whether or not this would have online multiplayer, and I'm curious if the Metal Gear Online community is going to be excited for Fox Hunt. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that the online mode looks certainly interesting, and I love me a game of cat and mouse. But apart from that, I think my game of show would easily have to be the Bloober Silent Hill remake. I think that Bloober has really set the bar high with the Silent Hill 2 remake that they did just last year. And again, it was in a lot of people's top 10s of the years. And I couldn't think of a better studio doing such a good job of remaking something that was so beloved, something that was so short, and really extrapolating it into a really long experience that not only justified the price tag, but added a lot of stuff for longtime obsessives and first-time players who have always heard, oh man, Silent Hill 2 is one of the greatest games ever made. And I think Bloober managed to show people why it was.
Do you think that established Bloober as like a horror powerhouse now?
100% set them as a serious contender, and I think earned the public trust to make a Silent Hill 1 remake. And I think they've earned that. And we see them not only doing that, but we also have stuff like Chronos coming from them. So very different experiences all around. And I'm hoping that the success from Silent Hill 2 is helping them build momentum to continue to make new experiences. But let's get into the overall grade. Let's do this on a report card scale.
All right.
For those, an American report card. I don't know how it is anywhere else, but you know, F, D, C, B, or A. So Matt, what do we think?
Yeah, I'm gonna give this a solid B. I think the main thing is that we've already seen some of the bigger games from this show before. You know, they've done trailers for Silent Hill F, they've done trailers for Metal Gear Delta, and you know, for Metal Gear in particular, like I love those games. I know what I'm gonna get with Metal Gear Solid Delta. Like I am just excited to play a newer version of it. But the finale with the Bloober Silent Hill 1 remake, that really elevated the show up for me and took it into like, that was a really good final surprise, and I'm really excited for that game as we talked about it so much, you know, like I think they're
They just gave us a still, basically.
They gave us a logo, and we're already so excited for it, and so I'm really I can't wait to play it. So I think this is a good solid show from Konami, and you know, Konami was out in the wilderness for a while, and so it's great to see them back.
Come back with a vengeance, it feels like.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
I'd give it a B as well. I mean, I think we've managed to squeeze an awful lot of conversation out of 2 words on a screen, which is pretty impressive. But I think, you know, there was a period of time where it seemed like Konami was just not going to do video games anymore, right? I mean, they really had gone off to do pachinko and mobile games, and they'd left all this stuff behind, and it just felt like they'd abandoned all their video game franchises, and that they were happy to just allow the back catalog to chug along in the, you know, the Switch eShop or whatever, and that would be it. So for them to come back with their 2 most beloved franchises and for them to look so great, I think is really encouraging. I think, you know, I think Silent Hill F, you know, I have my concerns about it being called Silent Hill, but I think the game looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks like a thing that we're all going to get spooked by. But apart from that, for me, I think I'm going to have to go with, I'm going to give it a C+. For me, it feels like, you know, we talked all about Konami being a bit of a dormant company in terms of actively releasing games that I think, you know, a core audience cares about. But I think, you know, they're the delinquent child who is, you know, starting to doing their homework on time, and they're starting to see a little bit of turnaround their academic score, and it's like, okay, I see a lot of promise come from. I hope that they can maintain that sort of level of progression, and I think that this is just their momentum to lose at this point. And in all honesty, I think, you know, despite Metal Gear Delta being a known quantity and Silent Hill F also being a known quantity, I think that Silent Hill remake was really the embellishment they needed at the end of this. The essay that was this homework, as if I'm going to commit to this analogy even further about schoolwork. And I think they really earned themselves a full letter grade with that confirmation that this big tease is, you know, maybe not going to be next year or the year after that, but on the horizon. For that, I am very excited. But folks, that was what we thought about the Konami press start. What did you think? Let us know in the comments below. But if you want to get even more nitty-gritty on everything we saw from the press start, check out our Metal Gear Solid Delta coverage. Check out all our Silent Hill F and Silent Hill Remake coverage. And for more on all things games this summer, make sure to stay tuned to IGN Summer of Gaming all month long.